Welcome to the Clause YouTube channel.
Together, we strive for a safer, secure, and more stable world.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Clause YouTube channel Strategic Frontlines. I'm Dr. Roshan Khanijo, and today we have with us Vice Admiral Mahendru, PVSM, AVSM, NM. He retired as Deputy Chief of Indian Navy, and the naval expert specializes in nuclear and submarines. We also have Captain Agnihotri. He's a senior fellow at the NMF. He has published, co-edited 9 books, and one of which is Strategic Direction of the Chinese Navy, Capability and Intent Assessment. I welcome both Admiral Mahendru and Captain Agnihotri to this podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Roshan, for having us over.
Thank you, ma'am.
Today we will discuss PLA Navy's strategies, the modernization trends, capabilities, and its objectives as far as Taiwan Strait is concerned and IOR, and what India needs to do. As we know that PLA has been seeking to shift focus from a predominantly defensive position to one of calibrated power projection, which is visible from its rapid shift from brown water to blue water navy. And this it is trying to do by strengthening its capabilities. And it has adopted a very potent naval strategy. Now, this strategy is a combination of coercive element and the benign element. If we talk about the coercive element, we can say that what China is trying to do is it's trying to incrementally encroach using gray zone warfare. Its Coast Guard is very aggressive. Its presence and intimidation is there. As far as the benign element is concerned, we all know it is HADR, anti-piracy, etc. So my first question is to Admiral Mahendru. Can you please elaborate on China's current naval strategy and what modus operandi they have adopted? Also, if you can also explain to our viewers what is China's A to AD strategy. Admiral Mahendru, all yours.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Khanijo. Any countries, especially a large country like China with a continental background largely, its strategy is a continuum, it grows. And China's strategy has also grown from largely coastal strategy to a slightly offshore strategy to now an offensive offshore strategy. I'm putting it very briefly, although the journey has been extremely long and covers almost about 40 years, starting from mid-80s. Presently, China's strategy is based largely on one or two major things. One is, of course, their territorial disputes in the South China Sea, their desire to to absorb Taiwan to meet the One China policy, and thirdly, from our point of view, most importantly, is their necessity of overcoming the Malacca dilemma or protecting their slog. So these are the 3 drivers which drive their strategy. This is how it is done. This is backed very clearly by extremely good funding. China's growth has been phenomenal, although officially, if you read, the budget has remained at 1.7, 1.8%. The size of the pie has remained the same, but the pie has grown because China's GDP is growing at 6 to 7% average for the last almost 15 to 20 years. So the money has come in. And also the shipbuilding industry has taken off in a fantastic manner. Almost 40 to 45% of the world commercial shipbuilding is done in China. So these are the drivers that are allowing China to do what it wants to do and move out from shore or outside. In defining China's strategy, one must understand their 2 lines which they talk about, the first island chain and the second island chain. Most of us would be aware of that. These largely draw the parameters along which China presently works in its present evolution or the strategy of You've shown the diagram. This diagram, of course, shows the first island chain and the second island chain. The first island chain starts from Kyushu in Japan, goes around Taiwan, goes around Philippines, and ends up in Sumatra. The second island chain, which is the blue one on the further side, starts from Honshu, goes to Guam, and ends up in Papua New Guinea. So there is supposed to be a third island chain also that some people talk about, which starts from Alaska and ends up in New Zealand. That is the third island chain, but that is too futuristic as of now. But to meet these and to match the desire to keep the people who will affect their present aims, like I said, their territorial disputes in South China Sea. So for the territorial disputes in South China Sea, they have uh, followed a strategy of what we call gray zone operations, largely gray zone operations, where they have gone ahead and created a militia which takes the load of the serving navy. They have grown. As a matter of fact, China has the largest coast guard in the world. Most people might not be aware of that. And a phenomenally large, what they call a People's Army Maritime Militia. So now that militia, so that is a strategy which they have occupied, which is a gray zone strategy, which keeps any confrontation in the South China Sea below threshold of war, but slightly beyond diplomacy. Now that is an area that they're working on, and they've kind of become masters of that. Using fishing boats and using dredgers is nothing new. Countries have used it forever for intelligence and for coercion. But the scale and the coordination with which they do it, that means it remains what they call a pseudo civilian military force, but it is used with military precision, which is controlled from Beijing, I think. And although they don't even call it the military militia, there is no mention of military militia as far as the Chinese are concerned. It is a Western construct which sees these things happening. This, I'm talking about the strategy to meet the first requirement of overcoming the territorial dispute. Now, these boats, the number of boats range from, some say 10,000, some say 20,000. The people go from 200,000, 50,000 to 200,000. A part of the military militia. They could be fishing boats. Now they are denying access to the navies of those countries which are in dispute, to the coast guards of those countries, even commercial vessels, even access of commercial vessels to oil rigs. Even when the Americans or their research vessels or their intelligence vessels move through, they would swarm them. So you swarm them, you shape their paths by swarming. Now this, legally you are not correct to ram into a fishing boat. So this is one strategy which they are following, which is the strategy of gray zone operations to meet their requirement in the South China Sea. The second strategy which they are following, and we brought out the first island chain and the second island chain, again what the Americans largely are calling the A2AD, anti-access area denial strategy. Again, the Chinese don't call it anti-access area defense, just for the information, area denial, they don't call it. They call it something as a strategic external line operation. So the external line, point being that they want to engage the enemy furthest from their coast at the earliest point as a preemptive strike, so that he doesn't come anywhere near where he can affect their area of operation. So that is how the very nice diagram which Dr. Khanijo showed brings out. You can show that diagram again if possible. Here now we can see, we spoke about the two lines, the first island chain and the second island chain. Now you will see that the weapons which are there are now meeting the first island chain, which are largely shore-based, and secondly, the second island chain would also use some air elements. So it is land-based, medium-range ballistic missiles, land-based, short-range ballistic missiles, and land-based missiles. Largely, you will see, and that is my perception, is that naval units are not largely employed in this whole thing. Now, why is that? That is because in case something starts in Taiwan, then the naval units and the amphibious units are going to be busy with Taiwan in any case. So while you are doing something in Taiwan, you have made two perimeters which you have the capability to defend. A lot of writers also talk about the fact that actually it needn't be a execution of the strategy. It has shaped the minds of the US Navy, the only Navy that will forcibly or in a influential manner affect the Taiwan operations, is to say that now the Americans will feel that their operations can only be done by an all-out response. They cannot send two carrier battle groups like they sent in 95, 96 during the last Taiwan Strait crisis. So they will now have to go all out, and going all out is a decision which is difficult to take. Therefore, they would rather not take it. So, I mean, you have shaped the thought. So these are the two large, strategies which presently they are employing. I have been slightly long in my answer, but I will come to an end.
No, it was required also. Now, since you have so nicely explained about the strategies, now for strategies, it is very essential that you should have the capabilities to match your strategy. So now I would like to bring in Captain Agnihotri. Before you talk about the capabilities, I would just like to show you what China has. I mean, this is as per as the Global Firefox Index. So you see, if our viewers are interested in knowing the comparison between India and China as far as the Navy is concerned, so you can see that they have got aircraft carriers 3, they have halo carriers which are 4, then they have submarines which is 61, and destroyers they've got 50, frigates 47, covers 72, and patrol vessels and mine sweepers. So all these things they have got as of now. So now I would like to ask you, can you just tell us what is the briefly, what are the modernization trends, what they are following, how are they developing their capabilities as far as their destroyers, how many numbers they want, and their submarines are concerned. So what is the objective behind all these kind of what you call it capacity building? Is it just purely to match the US, or there are other ulterior motives also? Your answer.
Thank you, Dr. Roshan. That's a very pertinent question, particularly coming after the strategy explained by Admiral Mahendru. I would like to answer your question by taking on from what Admiral Mahendru said with regard to the China's shipbuilding capacity. Now, in the 1990s, there were various state-owned enterprises. They were full of corruption, production inefficiencies, under capacity, and a whole lot of problems. Now, in the 1999, these many state-owned enterprises were clubbed together into two big mega shipbuilding firms under the state, of course, the China Shipbuilding Corporation and China Shipbuilding Industries Corporation. Now, this duopoly, which was of course often in healthy competition with each other, started creating mass-scale capabilities, shipbuilding capabilities in the civilian sector, and a positive spin-off of the same was felt in the PLA, I would say the warship building sector, because the same ship yards are building ships for the commercial sector as well as for the military sector. So, as by 2004, when President Hu Jintao took over as the chairman of the Central Military Commission, he clearly enunciated the prospective role of PLA Navy to say, first it was for the PLA and then PLA Navy being part of it. He says that the role for the historic missions, he talked about the historic missions for the PLA in the new age, in the new, I would say, century, or in the new millennium. Now, when he said that, from the historic missions context, the PLA Navy's role was slowly, progressively increased to initially carrying out things in the far seas, then getting into non-traditional activities, safeguarding maritime rights and interests. And these visions, which President Hu Jintao at that moment laid down, required a lot of capacity. And the capacity, as I said, was being provided by the shipbuilding infrastructure, which was these two behemoths, CSSC and CSIC were providing. So from 2005 onwards till date, the strength or the inventory of the modern Chinese ships and submarines has taken off in a very large way. And as you have shown the figures, they are presently the largest navy in terms of tonnage and number of ships, surpassing the US also. Uh, of course, I would like to draw a differentiation with regard to the blue water ships which can go all over the world and other ships. And in that context, China will soon have more than 350 and sometimes by up to 400 such ships and submarines, blue water ships in its navy. Now, with that capability coming in and these new ships coming in, the whole area of operations for the China will become the complete globe. Now, just to mention two important examples. One is the Chinese aircraft carrier program, starting in a very modest manner by trying to retrofit carrier initially, and then making a second indigenous carrier. Today, they are on the cusp of commissioning a third carrier, which is supposed to be flat deck and catobar type. Catobar is catapult assisted water arrested recovery type with EMOL system, and never ever tried EMOL system. So China's aircraft carrier is a manifestation of the I would say leap that they have taken in the shipbuilding. The other important program is the Type 55 destroyers, what the NATO classification says is run high. 8 of them are there with dual vertical launch systems, one forward and one aft, 10,000 to 12,000 tons. Again, that is a high point of their shipbuilding capability. The landing assault ships of 075 class, 076 class. I'm only giving examples of the most latest and the most capable ships that have come up. 30 odd Chiang Kai type of frigates and a follow-on version 054B coming up. So these capabilities are coming up in a big way only because infrastructure was taped up right in the beginning. And now from 2013 onwards till at least 2021, they were producing at an average of 16 warships per year, which is a phenomenal quantity surpassed by, I would say, every country, including the US. Sometimes ships are made by, one in 8 years, and they are making 8 in 1 year, at a certain time. When I say 8 in 1 year, that was of one class, 056 class. So the capability is there, and the capability was built because of the infrastructure. The only issues with regard to are the possibly the manpower issues. But as of now, we are not seeing anything major concern coming up in the open domain. So I will stop at that and maybe carry on further.
Yes. I'll try to bring in Admiral Mahendru. Now, Admiral Mahendru, I would like to ask you briefly if you can say how is the growth of submarines have been there. And secondly, I would also like to, as we were discussing about the Taiwan Strait crisis, if we see initially in 2024, this was the way they were trying to encircle Taiwan. In 2025, we found that it was more holistic in the sense not only there were ships, there were Coast Guard ships, but there were also Air Force and Army also used in that. I mean, Air Force in the sense that the JF series were used. This is how they had tried to use their assets. So they were not only using Shandong carrier, where they had 5 vessels, Coast Guards 4 vessels, fighters, stealth bombers, and they also had rocket brigade, which was 15B rocket systems, though they were the conventional ones. So what do you think are they going to do in future as far as Taiwan is concerned? What strategy are they going to adopt? If you can highlight a little bit on that, and the growth of the submarines and also the nuclear submarines, because the SLBM's range has quietly, if we see, it has increased quite a bit from 7,000 to now they say it's 12,000. So your comments, please.
Yeah. So thank you. Great expose by Agnihotri on the growth. But one must qualify the growth in the sense that the growth is a growth numerical numbers, numerical growth and tonnage wise, but capability wise, both at the aircraft carrier and at the submarine point of view, they are still slightly behind the curve, although they are catching up very fast. On the submarine side, I would just like to say that although we say they have 60 odd submarines, and you said overall rank, I saw three and all that, but one must say that as far as the nuclear submarines are concerned, they have only six SSNs and six SSBNs. That's it, 12. Rest are all conventional boats. Okay, the latest one in the conventional boats are the Yuans. They have earlier, they may have some old Romeos, some songs, and some Yuans. Yuans are the newest ones, 3Bs with the Sterling AIP. That is the newer one. So, as a submarine force, they are not really potent for global operations as yet. They are not in the league of the Americans. It is one can say that my neighbor has got 10 Marutis, and I have got 10 Mercedes Benz, and or I've got 8 Mercedes Benz, and I call him that he's a bigger car owner than me. He may be a bigger car owner, but then a Mercedes Benz is a Mercedes Benz. So the US as of now has about 67, SSNs and about 11 SSBNs. So they are way ahead in the submarine area at least. Also in the field of the quietening. One area which has always bothered the growth and the lethality of the Chinese submarine arm has been that they have been rather noisy, which is nothing unusual. The Americans have made, something like 120 nuclear submarines since 1955, 100 and maybe 10, 120. They have just made, all said and done, they wouldn't have made more than 6 plus 6 and another one or two. So about 14 or 15 nuclear submarines. So they have a long way to go. So that is as far as the submarines. Yeah, so submarines go. There is a long way to go. Their ship submarine building capability is what we have been monitoring, and that is again growing. But there are concerns. There are command and control concerns. Why they are not growing at the rate as they should, especially the SSBNs, being a no first use country. A country's assessment of its being no first use largely stems from the amount of importance it gives to its sea-based deterrent. Now, China is largely a no first use country, but its growth of the sea based deterrent has not been commensurate with its growth of the other naval components. So, these are pointers that the listeners may like to delve into a little deeper and see why this is happening. Is it command and control? Is it the fear that it is not quiet enough? So, these are the things as far as the submarines are concerned. Coming now to Taiwan, very interesting two slides you showed. Uh, Certainly, like I said, if they have covered the A2AD and they are able to keep the Americans and hopefully not the Japanese, if they decide to pitch in, one does not know. So, if they are able to keep these two people out of the area of operations, then they have well covered numerically at least there. But there are two factors or three factors I would like to bring, which I think may concern the Chinese in going out on a all-out frontal assault take over Taiwan. One, of course, is Taiwan itself has been, for a small country, it is quite well equipped, in all manner. I mean, whether it is in their air force, in their naval assets, they've got their indigenous nuclear submarine asset going, not nuclear submarine, submarine program going, and they're not a cakewalk, and they have been preparing for this for a long time. So, if one is the um Taiwanese force itself, it will not be a cakewalk. Are the Chinese ready for a slightly longish? We've seen the Ukraine battle, growing out. Although it was not a naval battle largely, it has been a land battle with skirmishes in the Black Sea. But are they ready for something like that? They have to be prepared for something like that. That is a question I think they will be asking themselves. The second would be the degree of American intervention. Would America come in fully despite their A2AD, despite the deterrence they are providing with A2AD? is the second question. The third question is their own amphibious capability, because finally you have to land. Whatever you may do, you may take out their airfields, you may land, take out their power stations, their industry, etc. Everything, but finally you have to land. So although, like Captain Agnihotri mentioned, they are moving very quickly towards creating the larger amphibious and the helicopter carrying capability from the sea is what the Americans used to call it. That means you don't have to touch much of the land. You don't have to touch land. You can, to a certain degree, leapfrog from the sea close to coast into land. So you can land manpower, some logistic support. There a number of helicopters required for the from the sea maneuver are very large. So that amphibious capability is what they would be thinking of and assessing. And the third thing, after you get into a country like Taiwan,
Taiwan.
which is not very sparsely populated, it is rather densely populated, it gets into urban land fighting. Again, the Chinese have limited capability of urban land fighting. They will have to build these capabilities also. Otherwise, it will become like what the Allied forces did. You reach the beaches, you enter into a certain area, but then you get bogged down. Now, these people had phenomenal wherewithal, and they had rare, link with the forces that had gotten. And the I'm just giving the example of the Second World War. So you had the Russians coming in from the north. So you had this pressure. This is what I think the Chinese would be concerned, and these are the factors they would be considering before taking a decision to go in. It's a tough decision. One wouldn't like to take the percentage or the chances of how they will do it or will they do it or not. But I think these are the factors they will consider in taking this step or waiting for a little longer.
What you said is quite right, because Taiwan geography is also very difficult. It is not easy to just go in and do it. They have their own, what you call it, they have got their own defenses, and
Yes.
they also have missiles, and they are now trying to make drones also. So they are also trying to make the defenses stronger. So now I would like to bring in here Captain Agnihotri, and we would like to go now to the next section, and that is what you call it, IOR region. Now, in the IOR region, we have seen that the what you call it, Chinese, their presence has increased. More of their ships and submarines are visiting IOR. Apart from that, they are developing dual-use outposts. And now these dual-use outposts basically to project their influence or secure its maritime interest, whatever you may call it. But if I'll just like to show you through the map, these were their dual-use outposts, what they are trying to have. So with this kind of a thing, I want to ask you, what are your views as far as China's foray into IOR is concerned?
Thank you, Dr. Roshan. That's a very pertinent question. Everybody is talking about the China's eventual presence in the maritime domain, particularly in the Indian Ocean region. This is actually a serious concern, and it is concerning India's policymakers, particularly the maritime policymakers, for some time now, because we have been seeing since the articulation of the Chinese defense white papers, 2004 onwards, they started giving more prominence to the PLA Navy's role, initially for cooperation, etc. By 2012, when President Xi Jinping took over, and he articulated a much more stronger role for the PLA Navy in making China into a great maritime power, wherein protection of maritime rights and interests, particularly the overseas maritime rights and interests. And in overseas, the white paper particularly mentions the Chinese overseas personnel, institutions, and organizations. Now it virtually leaves nothing to imagination that the PLA Navy would have to come and safeguard and protect these rights and interests. So starting 2008, particularly December 2008, we can take a timeline of 2009. Since then, the Chinese have been sending anti-piracy escort force constituting two frontline warships and one support replenishment ship. So three ships have been continuously deployed in the Gulf of Aden area and off Somalia coast since 2009, and they continue getting deployed till now. We all know that the piracy graph of piracy started reducing slowly, and it virtually became insignificant in 2013-14. But the ships of China are there. Now, right in the beginning, Admiral Mahendru had talked about, these Chinese ships have to protect the energy lines or commodity lines. That is a stated objective. The unstated objective, to my mind, is that China, as a growing power and having superpower aspirations, wants to be present with its, particularly in the Navy in the far seas, in all such global hotspots where in case some incident or event occurs, then it should be able to leverage its presence uh, and initiate such proactive diplomacy, maybe maritime diplomacy, so that its national interests are protected. And even if they are not protected, at least the national interests are put in a favorable position. So, with that in mind, we have seen slowly the number of ships, particularly since 2009, increasing into the Indian Ocean. And there is a estimate that at any time there are 10 to 12 Chinese Navy ships, also the other auxiliary ships which are supporting in the so-called maritime concept of operations, like deep sea research vessels, survey vessels, intelligence collection ships, the space telemetry ships. So all these 10 to 12 ships are there. Sometimes it is high point, sometimes it is low point, but I'm talking about average. A high point at particular time in 2017 was 19 ships were there of this kind, including Peace Ark hospital ships, 3 ship flotilla for supporting the BRI or for promoting the BRI uh, initiative of China. So when these ships are crisscrossing all over the Bay of Bengal, the Arabian Sea, the Indian Ocean, the maritime security situation for India becomes a little more complex. The submarines, as Admiral Mahendru said, Chinese are looking for better submarines, more assistance with more stealth capabilities. Now, as and when the issues in the Western Pacific, which includes the Taiwan Strait, the South China Sea, and the East China Sea, become a little more resolved, then we expect a lot of force coming into the Indian Ocean. As of now, it is in our interest that the area other side into the Pacific remains in some kind of a turmoil, so that the Chinese
Yes.
energies, particularly the defense energies, are kept over there. So, but notwithstanding, we have to always look at future. We are seeing the third aircraft carrier, as I said, may be commissioned any day now, and particularly after 3 carriers come in, China will make an experimental foray, if nothing, with the aircraft carrier group
Absolutely.
to the Indian Ocean region, just to make a statement. Now, if that happens, we have all along been concerned about such an eventuality. Of course, it cannot be, as Admiral Mahendru said, it cannot be operationally viable ab initio. It will take some time for this capability to come to a level of anywhere close to the US capability. But we in the Indian Ocean region, having our own uh, primary areas of interest to defend here, have to take cognizance of this possibility, and this possibility is going to only increase with time. So I will stop with that.
Very rightly, you pointed out 2, 3 points. I'll take that. But before, I want to ask Admiral Mahendru 2 things. Firstly, we have not discussed anything as far as drones is concerned. Now, drones, as far as China is concerned, they are developing extra large underwater vehicles. We know they are a force multiplier, but they are trying to arm it with torpedoes. So it is purely for offensive missions. Apart from mine laying, they can also be used for anti-submarine warfare. Secondly, they are also trying to develop what you call it underwater drone swarms. And recently, there were news that they were having a submarine launched underwater and aerial drone fail. That means it will be launched from the submarine, and it will travel, do the job, and it can also do the aerial thing. So I want to ask you, first question is how this particular domain is going to change the warfare. And secondly, as uh, Captain Agnihotri also stated about the Indian Ocean region. So I want to ask, what should be our recommendation? I mean, what recommendation you want to give? How Indian Navy should prepare? I'm sure they are preparing, but what should be our short-term and long-term goals? Because one thing I would like to show you, as far as our ranking is concerned, global ranking, we have slipped. Now we are 7th. And I mean, I was a little surprised. Indonesia, and then it is South Korea, and then Japan, and then us. So do you feel we need to build up somewhere, somewhat? Because if we are saying on one side that we want to have Navy which projects power, for that, in your views, assets, do you think it is important to have enough assets to project power? Your views.
Thank you, Dr. Khanijo. Both very critical issues and which will shape naval warfare. First, coming to your issue of drones. This is an area that I really like, and after leaving the Navy, I have really taken up to the UUV and the unmanned, or we call the UXV world. And one sees that the world today, in the world globally, the world of the UUVs is at a point of transition. The world started looking at UUVs in a concentrated manner, with a focused manner, somewhere in the at the turn of the century, I would say, end of the 90s, early 2004, 2005. And the problem was that everybody understood the necessity of doing what they were doing, but the challenges in the underwater world are phenomenally different from the challenges which are there in the air. So UAVs have then taken off in a phenomenal manner and have shaped from Sindoor to the entire Ukraine operations to what we are seeing in the Red Sea. Is shaping naval thought and naval operations in the air. But underwater, we are still at the level of whether we start with the Orca, especially in the XLUV area, the American Orca, the Australian Ghost Shark, or whichever one you look at. We are at a stage where we have now built the XLUVs. They are transitioning from building, design capability, etc., and payload experimentation into use case firming. That means we are firming our use cases and we are looking at finalizing our payloads. That is what. But the challenges still remain in the underwater world, as they remain always, is firstly on communication. You cannot communicate with them. So you have to give them everything pre-decided. And the pressures and the rigors of what underwater world are extreme. A small leak and you will lose $100 million thing in 3,000 meters of depth. That's the end of that day. So the confidence level of reliability versus deployment will be overcome. Is in the process. I think not will be is in the process of being overcome. So that is where we are. Now I will put it with respect to the Chinese experience. Now I've given you the global experience of UXVs and UUVs, especially the larger ones. The Chinese are experts in two types of UUVs. One is the deep sea UUVs. They've been to 10,000, almost 10,100 meters, close to the Sunda Trench. They've done the deepest dive ever. So that is one. That is a unpropelled manned UUV. They're good at that. And secondly, they're good at oceanographic data collection gliders. Very good at that. They've kind of mastered. They would leave something. You would have read of the Americans picking up some of their gliders, and 10 years earlier they had picked up American gliders. Now the Americans are picking up their gliders, and so they're trying to figure out how far they have gone along this road and how advanced they are. So they have reached this. But as far as the UUVs go, the XL UUVs for naval application, also with swarming, I think there is still a long way to go. I forget the classification. It was a CR series, if I'm not wrong. But their UUVs classification, I forget. So they are still at I think, at the stage of experimentation, deployment with weapons, deployment with torpedoes or mines. I think is still some distance away. I would give 5 to 7 years as a timeline for that before sufficient confidence is gained and communications allow such a thing to happen. So I think it is an important thing for us to keep our ear to the ground, because like you mentioned, and segueing into the next point of yours on how the Indian Navy should shape its response to the likely deployment, like Agnihotri very rightly mentioned, it is a matter of time. It is not a matter of whether they will or not. It is a matter of when they will. We just have to prepare ourselves for when it will happen. And the earlier we prepare ourselves, the stronger we will find ourselves when it happens. So we have to then prepare ourselves for their UUVs coming into our waters. We have to prepare for their submarines coming into our waters, and we have to prepare for their ships coming into our waters. That is how it is. The Indian Ocean, like you would see geographically, has got choke points on the east and west. Now, the eastern choke points, to our benefit, are extremely constricting. That means submarines can, with some difficulty and some risk, Malacca they can't do it. They can. Lombok is also difficult. Mumbai Vatar possibly one could. Otherwise, one has to come across around Australia to come into the Indian Ocean. So that gives us some kind of a defense, but that defense I don't think will last forever. We need to largely enhance our underwater domain awareness. We should be able to detect their submarines when they come in.
Yes.
That is very important. That's a critical activity, because again, that's a decadal activity. It's not an activity which you can start today and finish in the next 2 years. No, if I start today, it will take me a decade to kind of achieve some sort of confidence in my underwater domain awareness, especially on the eastern side. Okay. Uh, Coming to now that the ships part. Ships also, like Captain Agnihotri mentioned, it is a matter of time before the aircraft carrier comes in. They had done one small sweep coming in through the Sunda and going back through Malacca some years ago, but now that will become more sustained. Once Djibouti is able to sustain
Yes.
an aircraft carrier, then they will make the foray, because the jetties and the support is not ready. It will take some time, but it will happen. We need to strengthen our MDA, our ability to track from space the movement of ships, the fact that ships have entered into the Indian Ocean. The earlier I know that this has happened, underwater and above water, is critical. We are taking steps with our SBS, with our SBS DF. We are taking steps through AUKUS. A lot of things are happening, but I think this is something that we need to focus on largely. Of course, after we have detected them underwater and above water, and we are clear on that they are moving in an area where we don't want them to move into a monitoring position or into a inimical position, then we must have the assets to counter them. There is no doubt about that. So we will have to then look at capabilities to counter these assets which come into our waters. So I think it's very clear that we don't have a choice, especially with Sindoor collusivity. We used to talk about collusivity as an if. Now there is no if. The and is written. It is and. So China and Pakistan collusivity is now defined, especially if not open collusivity, at least collusivity in intelligence, satellite communication intelligence is going to be readily available. So if that is the case, then we have a task at hand, and we really need to buck ourselves up. And in that, I won't say we've been doing very well on the ship side, but we've been doing very poorly on our submarine build-up at least. The delays in building up our conventional submarines, which are largely almost 30 years old, majority of them, is an area that we severely need to focus instantly. And even if we do it instantly, we'll be behind the curve. So that is the thing I would say. And also avoid as far as possible, like we did with Sri Lanka, we did with Maldives, their ships being given open access to ports in and around our areas of interest. And also they should not be able to build bases in the Indian Ocean. Finally, if the aircraft carrier comes in and their larger ships come in, they will need bases. You showed dual use infrastructure that they have created, very right, but we have to keep ourselves very alert that this dual use remains commercial and mercantile. and does not come into the military zone. Because if they are able to capitalize this dual use thing, and they are able to the trajectory which Agnihotri has drawn on shipbuilding and submarine building, if it meets, and they have been very fast. I mean, we used to talk about the Chinese Navy that there's still a lot of time. It will take a lot of time, but I think they have surprised us and the Americans at the rate at which they have grown. Phenomenal rate they have grown at. So I think we should not allow them to create any basis using all our political clout or economic clout or a regional cloud, soft power, whatever you want to use. We should not allow them to create bases. I think that would give you an understanding of
Yes.
how to counter the.
Two very important points you talked about was firstly real-time awareness, and it's correct that you need to have more satellites to get the real-time awareness of things. And secondly, drones. Yes, drones is going to play an important role. And we just talked about the conventional drone. We have not talked about countries which may later on go in for nuclear drones. For example, Russia, it has Poseidon, which is a nuclear-powered drone having a nuclear weapon in it. So the warfare is going to be very complex, and you have to be at it. There is no point in considering that this may not happen or that may not happen. You have to be at it. And underwater cables, there are so many things, but because of shortage of time, we have not discussed. Now, if you permit, we'll take few questions.
Certainly.
Okay. This question is from Mr. Akash Sadani. With the nuclear triad available, it is a foregone conclusion that we already have a well-formed conventional triad. Keeping Op Sindoor in perspective, is the Chinese Navy relevant?
Yeah, so I'll take that, Dr.
Yes,
Roshan.
please.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, in the sense that certainly we have the triad, and it's an evolving capability. I must say that we are evolving towards a potent and a capable triad as we get more and more SSBNs commissioned. But I think I would separate the two, the conventional Chinese capability and the nuclear, triad. For a starter, China doesn't even acknowledge the threat that India, poses from a nuclear point of view. There has been no talk, no discussion. Track one, formal discussions have not been there. So China does not consider us to be a nuclear threat in that sense. We have a triad which we pose against the Chinese, but the Chinese don't discuss that with us. So I don't know how that deterrence takes place. But I think that is separate from the conventional force. The Chinese ships will remain relevant. They will affect the flow of traffic, the influence that we exert in the Indian Ocean region. And so I will not say that they are irrelevant because we have a triad. Short answer.
There's Amitesh Behra who asks, why China is interested in Mariana Trench? No country in the world is exploring that place. Even USA left that place. Probably
Can I
Captain
answer that? The objective here is not Mariana Trench. Objective here is to build the manned and unmanned submersibles, which can go up to very deep waters. Now, in 2012, they had made the Chiaolong submersible, manned submersible with 3 people. That itself went to 6,700 meters and created a record of sorts at that moment. Now, as Admiral Mahendru has previously explained, in the Mariana Trench, the trial of manned submersibles has been carried out up to 10,990 meters to be precise. That is very close to 11,000 meters. So it leaves no part of the ocean worldwide for where Chinese cannot reach. So when you talked about, say, submarine cables, it can be as deep as as it gets. But if theoretically I'm talking, the Chinese have the capability to reach 100% of the seabeds and bottom of the seas worldwide. So Mariana Trench is the deepest part. When you have an equipment and you want to test it to the maximum capacity, then you go to a place which is providing maximum capacity. So Mariana Trench is that area. One other important thing is the Mariana Trench area. When you say water column above Mariana Trench, that is the area which the U.S. Nuclear submarines, U.S. only has nuclear submarines, so they transit to the South China Sea, to the East China Sea from Guam side and from the Central Pacific, and take that route when they are coming closer for their operational patrols or underwater recce or whatever you want to call it. So Chinese have also been trying to have deep underwater sensors, wherein they can have the really deep underwater sensors tethered to the seabed. Now, if the seabed itself is so deep, they better be interested in the Mariana Trench, and then these underwater sensors, they are expected to pick up these transit of the American assistance uh, coming in and out from that area. So that is the main interest of China in Mariana Trench. So one is to pick up the possibility to pick up the nuclear submarines of America, which is coming closer to China, and other is to test out their deep underwater submersibles of manned types as well as unmanned types.
I think another question is from, I think it's from Commodore Jai Singh, is lack of submarine numbers vis-a-vis USA notwithstanding, its SSN force is adequate, and with another 6 to 9 in the next few years, it will be quite a formidable force. I think that's quite true, Admiral Mahendru, if you want to add something to it.
No, certainly what Commodore Ajay Singh is saying is relevant and correct. But I would just like to say that, you see, it depends on your force structuring. What are you making the SSNs for? Where are you planning to deploy them? It may be okay from our point of view, but maybe they need more. And it's a point which can be considered. Thank you.
There's another question from Mr. Prasad. He says that USA drones are going to change entire dynamics of modern warfare. Hope we are learning from Russia-Ukraine war and developing ourselves.
So I would like to totally agree with Mr. Kundan Prasad. The only issue is that in the maritime warfare, you are far, far away from shore in many cases. China is operating its far seas concept of operations. Now, for those kind of things, you have to have shipborne drones, of course. So shipborne drones become important, and but the limitation of land-based drones, particularly for maritime warfare, will always be there because from land you can deploy in large numbers. In the deep sea, middle of the sea, there is limitation with regard to how many drones of say ship can carry. Now, of course, China is cognizant of that issue, and they are making only drone carriers now. But the drone carriers, in addition to giving them capability, can also be a liability for them because so many drones say concentrated on one particular asset, uh, but and operating at far seas. Till the time they do not have the captive air defense to save or protect their force, either the fleet ships or such UAV carriers, etc., or any critical asset at far seas, then China is always, or any other country, particularly in the maritime domain, with regard to the UAS, when you say the airborne systems, is limited. But to counter that, UUVs and USVs, as Admiral Mahendru explained, there is quite a bit of movement happening on that sector. Thank you.
So the last question what we'll take is, with a vibrant and growing tri-service rocket force and keeping Andaman Nicobar Island, that is ANC command, in perspective, what would be the probability of these Chinese intruding into the IOR?
So, yes, yeah. So the Chinese rocket force is certainly potent, and their ability to strike at distant ranges using ballistic missiles and bombers, whatever you want. Certainly, the bombers don't come under the tri-service rocket force, but it is possible. But why would they do it? My point is very simple. Why would you attack Andaman and Nicobar, and what would you do with Andaman and Nicobar? It doesn't serve any purpose. Largely the Chinese would, have a slight preponderance on the land side, on the land. So when we are in trouble on land, we would like to leverage their weakness or their Malacca dilemma at sea within the Indian Ocean, which is very close to my subcontinental mass. So that would be there. But would they like to just take over Andaman and Nicobar Islands for the sake of it? It will have to serve some larger strategic purpose, and only then would they. But they would intrude, certainly, like we said. They will be in the Indian Ocean. One cannot deny that. But intrude is a strong word. They would be present in the Indian Ocean, and how we counter that is a question, and control that environment when they are in the Indian Ocean is what we see for ourselves and work out a way around that.
There's one positive comment. Delighted to hear my friend is mentioning about you, Captain Agnihotri, and
Thank you, Dr. Shastri.
so
Thank you so much,
Admiral
Dr.
Mahendru is
Shastri.
also talking about you. So
Thank you.
then
Thank you so
I
much.
would like to thank Admiral Mahendru and Captain Agnihotri for a very informed discussion on Chinese naval platforms and the PLA Navy. Thank you so much. And I would also like to thank all our viewers for so many questions. I'm sorry, there's less time, so I cannot take all the questions, but probably next time I'll see if I can take maximum number of questions. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Dr.
Really enjoyed
Roshan.
being here. Thank you.
Yeah, it was my pleasure to attend this webcast. Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral Mahendru, and thank